Thanks very much. Appreciate your time. Just very quickly, the only real bit that I'll talk about Stackla. So we're a content marketing platform that enables, I guess, many of the world's sort of largest brands, such as Ford and McDonald's, Contiki, Sony, to put user-generated content at the heart of their marketing. And that's what we do, and that's all we do. So today I'm going to talk about the power of that UGC and the role it's got to play in the purchasing cycle. Big data is something that we're all very familiar with now, and it allows us to, I guess, define our audience really down to the nth degree. It informs many of the decisions that we make. One of the challenges with big data as we get to that sort of personalization level is we need to make sure that the content keeps up and the messaging keeps up and it is continued to be relevant and targeted. And that's where UGC has got a role to play and a really important role to play. And as we say, big data needs big content. Stackla's got a tagline which is let your customer tell your story. And so it would be very wrong of me to stand up here and just talk about UGC without actually asking one of our customers to do it. So Contiki has been one of our customers for a very long time now, and we're very happy to have them as a partner. So whilst I will talk about perhaps the more theoretical principles of user-generated content and the role that it plays, Alexis is going to talk about the more practical elements of that and how to put that into day-to-day action. So I'll introduce Alexis and ask him to come up here in just a minute. So the single message that I really want to convey today is curate, don't create. Now, I could be accused of being a little bit alarmist here or extremist, and I think that's probably fairly fair. I guess what I could have said is curate, but it's also quite a good idea to blend it with some other branded content that you spend a lot of money creating too, but it wouldn't quite have been as impactful. So we'll stick with curate, don't create. And today I really want to talk about the authenticity of that content and the trusted power of UGC or customer content and how you harness it, not just in one place, but in multiple places, multiple touch points. And how you can get it to power your customer around that purchasing cycle. So let me just quickly take a step back. The past decade has really seen a little bit of a perfect storm happening with a collision of enabling technologies. And those enabling technologies are establishing what is now a very credible sharing ecosystem. And from iPhones to GoPros on the hardware side of the spectrum through to Twitter and Snapchat, etc., on the software side, those two things have come together and collided to create that ecosystem so that we're now sharing our experiences, our thoughts, our reviews, etc., at an ever-increasing rate. Okay? We know that. Okay? And whilst the companies and the networks and the brands that are involved in that come and go quite regularly. Look at Vine, look at Google+. The underlying cultural shift that's happened and the habit is here to stay. And that's all well and good. I don't know if you can see that. That's all well and good in that everyone is sharing that content. All right? But the most significant change for marketers is that people are actually making decisions off that content now. Okay, and there's nothing particularly new to that. I think, we've been all sharing our opinions over the garden fence ever since the garden fence was invented. But it's only relatively recently that brands are actually starting to take advantage of that and actually encouraging those conversations. And every brand in every vertical, from travel to CPG to sport, retail, not-for-profit, is being talked about and is being shared. And it's no longer just the realm of the cool brands. No offense to Nationwide here. I really hope there's no one from Nationwide here. I can say that. I started my marketing career working for a bank, so I'm allowed to say that. And that makes sense. People trust people more than they trust brands, right? because the customer stories are genuine and believable. Right? They ignite passion and they inspire action. Okay? And increasingly, people are demanding highly personalized experiences, and the brand messages are not really cutting through to that extent. So brand-centric marketing is being replaced by customer-centric marketing. Or in short, brands are actually marketing with customers rather than at customers. This campaign here, apologies, Alexis, a competitor of Contiki's. Not really, okay. But I don't know whether anyone saw this campaign. People were at the heart of this campaign, or customers were at the heart of this campaign. So everything from, I don't know whether anyone saw the live TV ad that they did of people literally live on holiday, cutting from various different destinations. The whole campaign was powered by people, and even right the way through to the fact that if I took a photo of myself on a beach in Barbados and used the right hashtags, 2 minutes later it would have been on a digital billboard in Waterloo Station with the timestamp on it saying taken 10 minutes ago. And that's powerful stuff. Okay? So let's just talk about that power and why UGC is so powerful. So we talk about the 3 R's, real, relevant, and we struggled with the last one, I must admit. So ridiculous volumes. And I'll talk through each of those. So firstly, UGC powerful, it's all about the authenticity of UGC. It's more authentic, people trust it, and people are making decisions off the back of it. Right? Consumers tend to trust each other. Right? And it actually is driving purchasing behavior, and that is social advocacy at play. The second point is that it's relevant. It's extremely relevant. People are very much inspired by experiences and products that they can actually visualize themselves consuming. Right? And if we take this example, here, can't see that well. This is Rachel. Actually is Rachel. She likes women's wear, monochrome, black and white, and active wear. I'm not convinced that she does like that, but for this example, it's perfect. And so we can take that, we can surface that content that is relevant to Rachel and dynamically personalize the pages that she's looking at. Now, personalization isn't new. That's fairly old hat, but the ability to deliver highly targeted, user-generated content directly to that user is really powerful, right? Because it's showing people products that they can relate to. It's content by shoppers in this example, with similar interests, similar tastes, similar profiles, and the results can be exponentially better. And that's where big data comes in, right? Because we know so much now about our customers. We know what their shopping habits are. We know that they like active wear. And we have that ability to target them almost at a one-to-one relationship. But that in itself creates a challenge, which brings me to the ridiculous volumes. So having tons of amazing content and all that data, to help you create those sophisticated targeted campaigns, is only useful if you've got enough content to be able to deliver to it, right? And you can create all that branded content. I'll tell you now, it's going to be very expensive to create 10 times the amount of content that you actually need. All right? Big data needs big content. And with UGC, it's like having thousands of photographers and content contributors, at hand every single day. And now everyone's, smartphones are so ridiculously good, and GoPros and things like that, that, the quality is astounding now. And I don't think we could say that 3 or 4 years ago even. So we've established that UGC is powerful. The final piece of the jigsaw is, how are you going to use it? And, our clients, and Contiki is a great example of that, find that when UGC underpins every single stage of that purchasing cycle, not just a website, not just a social hub, right? That's when you start getting impressive results. So from the moment that someone sees an Instagram photo on their feed or on a billboard on the way to work, UGC can power that customer through to the next stage. You might get round to kind of retargeting. So once again, publish user-generated content into your retargeting campaigns to keep it front of mind. It might be that there's maybe there's an abandoned shopping trolley campaign, email campaign that you want to put out to users. Pushing UGC into there to give that authenticity will power you back into the cycle. All right? And ultimately, you get to the sharing bit where you complete the cycle again. But it has to deliver results. Otherwise, it's pretty pictures on a page, which is all well and good. But whether you're looking just for a generic increased engagement, whether it's sales, whether it's campaign effectiveness, or it could just be simply reducing your content costs. Right? UGC has got the ability to power all of those results, and we see it every single day in our customers. So, back to the original message, curate, don't create. But I don't want you to take my word for it. I would like Alexis to come up here. I thought I'd embarrass him slightly. The reason I've asked Alexis up here is because he actually wrote this a couple of years back, which is pretty much exactly what Stackla's proposition is. It's about putting UGC at the heart of every single stage of your marketing cycle. Alexis.
It's always nice to see something you wrote a couple of years ago still makes sense. Sometimes I look back at things I wrote and I'm like, what was I thinking? This one's good. It makes a lot of sense. I want to chat today about our approach at Contiki to content and to UGC. For those who don't know us, Contiki is a youth travel brand. We are a tour operator, so we actually operate product. And that means we have a highly experiential, highly intangible product to communicate to a youth audience who may not have ever experienced our product before. So that makes it very complex. Makes it quite difficult, and that's one of the reasons why structurally we have looked, over the past few years, we've been on a journey of really having a marketing strategy that is focused around content. And that's very important because it allows us to communicate our brand messages, our product value proposition very strongly. So I'm sure you guys can appreciate if you're looking to book a trip to Asia or to Latin America, one of the best ways to be able to understand that isn't just to see a list of specs of what you get, but it's really to understand, what it feels like to be there. Video content coming to the fore, and particularly UGC as well. So we've made a lot of drive over the last few years to have a marketing strategy that is underpinned by content. And we have a content strategy which is underpinned by social. Social is very important to us because of some of the reasons that Andy has stolen my thunder already, but that's fine. Around youth and the millennial market being a lot more distrusting of traditional media channels, a lot more distrusting of broadcast marketing to some extent, and really grasping onto social as a source of authenticity and realness, so to speak. So, we have a brand promise that is centered around the social aspect. All of our trips, we do group travel. So social is at the very core of the product we deliver, and that makes it prime to be at the core of the marketing that we use to communicate to our customers. And that's also been a focus of us changing our team structure and embedding across the whole team as well, not just something that we sort of say and expect the existing structures and teams that we had previously to just be able to adapt to that. We've had to bring in new skill sets, take a real lead from content creators and publishers in terms of processes. It's been a journey we've been on for a number of years. In terms of social, we are social to the core. When we did a repositioning of Contiki and we rolled out a new brand positioning, this was 4 years ago, so don't roll your eyes. We did have a hashtag as part of our new positioning and tagline. We've moved on from there now. But it just goes to show how critical social and user-generated content is to us as a brand. And I think one other thing that's important to understand, and I'll come on to some practical examples in a minute, is part of what's driving this. So Andy talked about the purchasing cycle, and he had a diagram I'm sure everyone's seen about 1,000 times with a cycle of people going from awareness to consideration to purchase, preference, purchase, etc. We see this as traditionally as marketers, we see this as a cycle or as a funnel that people go down. But the reality, and particularly in travel, and I'm sure this applies to many other sectors and verticals as well, is that it isn't quite so structured. People don't just go in discrete blocks from awareness to consideration of a product to a purchase, or through a researching phase and then to purchase. What we've found through our research very much is that people bounce from this idea of inspiration or at the top funnel, however you want to describe it, and moving down towards the more practical lower funnel activity on an ongoing basis. So if you look at what we've got up on screen here and use your imagination to how you book travel, someone booking a Croatia trip, they might start that out seeing an amazing shot on one of their friends' Instagram feeds, and they're like, this is amazing, what is this place? It's Croatia. Okay, how much does it cost to get there? How long is the flight to Croatia? Right down into that practical detail that they want to get at the sort of lower part of the purchasing funnel. Which islands are the most beautiful? Where should I go to? Okay, should I stay in a hotel or a pension or an Airbnb? How does this work? Seeing some inspiring videos. What's the currency? Are they in the euro over there? Like, how does this work? So people bouncing between this idea of upper funnel inspiration-led experiences with a brand down to the very practical, detail-oriented, lower funnel activity, and they bounce up and down. So the challenge for us isn't that we can just have this well-defined, discrete funnel that people need to follow. Today, consumer, you're going to be in awareness and inspiration mode. Tomorrow, we would like you to be in research mode. Then you're in, it doesn't work like that. We need to be respectful of the consumer's journey and provide content for them and let them self-select that content in a way that makes sense to them in terms of where they're at as part of their journey. And this has really underpinned our content strategy and therefore into our marketing strategy from there. So we use user-generated content as a closer, so to speak, at that sort of pointy end. So what you can see in a relatively pixelated manner on screen here, I'll try and explain, is product content on the Contiki website. So this is an itinerary that someone is looking at. These are search results that we're displaying, which are actually quite, relatively far down in that purchasing funnel. This is someone looking for a specific product, browsing an itinerary to see what happens on day 3 of a 21-day trip. And we use user-generated content to help show off that product value proposition. So we're not just using user-generated content at that awareness and inspiration level. We might have something that is an included experience on Contiki, like a cooking class in Italy, and we will use user-generated content to actually show off that detailed value proposition to the consumer. So we use this in search results. This bottom listing here is search results, which actually feature user-generated content on our trip pages with itineraries, and feeding UGC into that helps us improve the authenticity, but also, to Andy's point, have a wide, broad reach of content that we can actually call on without having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on photo shoots to cover off 300-400 trips that we have, and multiple product shots for each trip as well. So that's at the sort of pointy end. We also do use UGC, as I'm sure a lot of people do, at that inspiration and awareness level. So as a way in, as an entry point into product. So this is content that we have that sits on our I call it a blog. My content team get very annoyed when I call it a blog. Our content platform. So this is in, as part of our strategy, we have a lot of areas both on our site and on our social networks where we're curating content and creating content. In this one, this is one way that we actually use user-generated content to drive people directly through to product when they are at that inspiration and awareness phase. And something that is probably a little bit off topic, but we're actually going analog as well. So we use Stackla to actually curate content that we actually use in a print media now. So I think we're coming full circle in terms of channels and in terms of traditional media, but we actually take a lot of our social content that we get online and actually feed that back into our print media. Brochures, believe it or not, are still very important for travel brands, particularly through the travel trade, and it lends that level of authenticity to our print collateral in addition to just what we're doing online. So I think I'm going to come into a couple of points around how we're doing personalization and what kind of content we're personalizing. But first I want to sort of talk about the program on the other end, about how we're collecting all of this content. So as Andy said, it's quite easy to understand how you can personalize your website based on certain factors, but you need to make sure you have that volume of content as well. And so we have gone on a process to make sure that we start with the end in mind when we're looking to collect that content. So we don't take a if you build it they will come kind of approach and just ask people to hashtag our brand or mention our brand and hope that we're going to get the content back that we want. We actually put a lot of effort into the creation of the programs that deliver that content back. So we think beyond what just lives on the network. So we don't just think, well, how is this going to be viewed on Instagram? We actually think about how we can structure a content creation program to give us the data we need to be able to repurpose that content in ways that are meaningful. So for example, we have, let's say, about 350 trips that we sell, tours that we sell. Each of those has a separate hashtag, and that allows us to collect large volumes of content, but then be able to break that down into bite-sized pieces that make sense for us to be able to personalize across all channels, whether that's digital, on the website, on mobile, through email communications. We also run an incentive program for our trip managers, which are like tour guides, to get our travelers to create this content as well. So we ask them to use a trip manager's own individual hashtag, and then we run incentive programs around that as well. So whoever does the best, creates the best content, whoever drives the most content, will get some kind of incentive, some kind of prize. And that allows us to have, and our trip managers, the guys at the coalface, to have a reason to be able to push our customers to create more content. And then obviously we want to get the brand effort, so we put our own hashtags in there as well. And what that does is it allows us to not just have a large bucket of content, and we get around through this program, not all of our social media and UGC, through this program we get around 7,000 pieces of content a week, which is pretty good in terms of how much content you need to run a website. It allows us to have the data to be able to slice and dice and display that content back to the users in a way that's meaningful. So be deliberate in terms of the way that you set up your programs when you're actually looking to garner that content. And that allows us to do all of the things that we did before, where we can actually show very specific pieces of content that are specifically related to an individual trip or an individual product on a trip page for users. So that's how we pull all of that content together. But then how do we use data to drive the personalization of that content? So without going into too much detail, we personalize on the Contiki website based on 4 different dimensions plus the stage of the buying cycle. So that is the travel style that someone likes and prefers, like their preferred way of travel. Their experience, whether they're an experienced traveler or an inexperienced traveler, makes a big difference in the types of information and types of content they want. Their budget, and the most obvious one is their destination. So we personalize a lot of content on the website based on these factors. We also do it with our UGC as well. Obviously, there are some areas where user-generated content probably isn't quite as good as personalizing on someone's experience level, but very, very good at being able to personalize on the destination that someone is interested in. And as Andy said, big data needs big content needs a great tool to manage it as well, and we do use Stackla to both collect, to moderate, and then to display this content back on our website in a way that allows our end user content team, not our development team, to be able to make changes on the fly and be able to curate and moderate all the content that we need. And again, we have around 300 different buckets of content set up in Stackla to be able to facilitate how we push that back out to our trip pages. So what does personalization look like? As a guide, this might be someone who lands on the Contiki website, looks at our Asia regional page. They might visit another page that talks about getting a passport, so we know that they're an inexperienced traveller. We know that they're interested in Asia as a destination, and that will allow us to target the content that we would show on our homepage and be able to serve up to them next time they come back to the website UGC that is focused around an Asia experience that drives through to Asia product. Another example might be someone who, again, is looking at a different type of product, a European product, and we can work out that they are actually someone who is a bit further down the purchasing path through that decision-making cycle, and we then personalize that content either on the website and through email to be able to drive that person back and actually move them down that purchase path further. I think Andy also touched on using social for paid media. That is also something that we do, so retargeting. So we use the Stackla platform to curate content and also to rights manage that content as well, so that we can have a process, a relatively seamless process where we can actually go out to someone who's submitted a piece of content, get rights management approval, and then feed that content into our paid media activity. So if someone has come on and looked at a particular destination or a particular product, we can actually serve up content, social UGC content that was captured on that product to them as a piece of remarketed media. So a few ways that we're personalizing. I think one thing is that there is so much complexity you can build into any personalization strategy. The key is to start fairly simple and look at the things that are going to be the low-hanging fruit. But as Andy said, one of the challenges that we've always found is how can we get the volume that we need, the volume of content that we need to be able to, to be able to satisfy that personalization need. So just as a broad example, we travel to 6 continents. Even if we're only working consumers down, our website traffic down to the continent they want to visit, we need to be able to look every time that we personalize on that, 6 times the amount, 6 times the volume of content that we need to be able to make that personalization over just a static website. So very important that we have on tap access to a wide range of content. And the final point I would make, or 2 final points, one of my favorite quotes, I guess, is that data is the oil of the 21st century. It is what drives commerce. It is what drives and will continue to drive many industries moving forward. And personalization is one of the key elements that we have to take advantage of that. The other point that I would make on the back of personalization is just measurement. How easy or difficult, how effectively can we measure those efforts that come back from a content program, from a UGC program? Have we got effective attribution to understand the impact of those? Have we got effective A/B testing on all of the personalization to understand the impact of how that works and whether it is worth the effort that goes into setting these things up? So that is me, guys. I think we're going to have some time for questions afterwards, so I'll hand back to Andy.
Thank you, Richard.